Stop waiting. Those two words might be the most urgent invitation you'll ever hear. Too many people spend precious years hoping for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect feeling before they take action. But life does not wait, and opportunity rarely knocks twice. The future you dream of is not something you stumble upon. It is something you create step by steady step, beginning exactly where you stand. I know this truth because I ignored it for too long. In my early career, I kept thinking a better moment would arrive. I told myself I needed more education, more savings, more confidence. Days turned into months, months into years, and I was still making lists instead of moves. Then one evening, an older friend said, "You're not waiting for the right time. You're waiting for the fear to disappear. And it never will. Start anyway." That simple sentence jolted me awake. I realized that waiting was itself a decision, and it was costing me the very life I wanted. Creation begins with a single act of courage. You don't have to see the whole road to take the first step. I began small. I set aside 30 minutes every morning to work on a side project that had been living only in my imagination. At first, the progress was invisible, but each day's effort built momentum, and within a year, that project had become a thriving business. The perfect time had never come. I created the time and filled it with action. The habit of waiting often hides beneath respectable excuses. We say we're gathering information, saving money, waiting for a sign. But if we're honest, most delays come from fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort. Fear will always have something to say. The question is whether you will let it dictate the shape of your days. The only antidote is action. Even the smallest step weakens, fear's hold, and strengthens your will. Think of a seed. It does not wait for the weather to be perfect before it starts to grow. It simply responds to the soil and light it has. Growth is messy, uneven, sometimes invisible, but it starts. Your future is a field that will remain empty unless you plant something now. Action does more than move you forward. It clarifies your vision. We imagine that clarity precedes action, but more often action creates clarity. When I finally began writing each morning, I discovered what I truly wanted to say only by putting words on the page. Ideas that seemed brilliant in theory fell flat, and unexpected insights came alive. If I had waited for a perfect outline, I'd still be waiting. Doing reveals what planning cannot. Creating your future also means owning your choices. It is tempting to blame circumstances or other people for a life that feels stuck. But responsibility is the price of freedom. When you accept that your next 5 years will be shaped more by your daily decisions than by luck or external approval, you reclaim your power. This is not a burden, it is a gift. It means you do not have to wait for anyone's permission to begin. Start where you are with what you have. Too many people believe they need ideal conditions, more time, more money, more knowledge before they can create. But history is full of examples of those who began with little more than a clear intention and relentless consistency. A friend of mine launched a community garden in a vacant lot with a handful of volunteers and borrowed tools. They planted, watered, and showed up every weekend. Today, that garden feeds dozens of families and has inspired similar projects across the city. They didn't wait for a grant or a miracle. They created their future with what was already in their hands. Momentum is a powerful ally. The first steps may feel awkward, but each small victory builds confidence. As you act, resources and opportunities appear that you could not have predicted. I once postponed a speaking engagement because I doubted my ability. When I finally accepted a smaller local event just to begin, someone in the audience invited me to a larger conference. That single yes opened doors I hadn't even known existed. Action attracts opportunity. Discipline supports creation. Daily habits turn ambition into achievement. I protect a morning hour for focused work, free from distractions. That single practice has produced articles, talks, and partnerships that waiting never could. The routine may look rigid, but it delivers the freedom of progress and the thrill of seeing ideas take shape. Of course, beginning does not mean reckless leaps without thought. It means moving forward with the wisdom you already possess and a willingness to learn as you go. Plans matter, but endless planning can become another form of waiting. Draft a simple path, take the first step, Then adjust as reality teaches you. Remember that setbacks are not signals to quit, they are teachers. When you start creating, you will meet obstacles, financial, emotional, practical. Expect them. Each challenge refines your skills and strengthens your resolve. I once invested months in a project that failed to generate the expected income. Instead of retreating, I studied the lesson, improved my approach, and used the experience to build a stronger second venture. Today, that venture thrives, and I trace its success back to the lessons of that initial disappointment. Creating your future also involves the people around you. Choose companions who encourage action, not endless delay. Spend time with those who are building something of their own, and their momentum will fuel yours. I noticed my energy change when I began meeting weekly with a group of friends who shared goals and progress. Their dedication pushed me to keep moving when I might have stalled. Perhaps you wonder how to balance action with patience. Creation requires both. Patience is not waiting idly. It is continuing to work without demanding instant results. A farmer plants and tends the field, knowing harvest will come in its season. Your job is to plant faithfully and stay steady while growth happens underground. So stop waiting. Start with a single deliberate act today. Write a page, make a call, enroll in the class, start the savings account, walk the first mile. It does not have to be dramatic. What matters is that you begin. Each small act is a declaration, I am the author of my future. Each day you choose action over delay, you move from wishing to creating. Years from now, you will look back and see that the turning point was not a grand event, but a quiet decision. You stopped waiting. You took the step you could take, and then another, and another. The life you now enjoy will be the harvest of those first brave moments. Start today. The future is already waiting for you to create it. The moment you decide to stop waiting is the moment the world begins to open. Doors you never noticed start to appear. Ideas that once seemed distant suddenly feel within reach. Not because life has changed overnight, but because you have. Action sharpens your vision. The same streets you walked yesterday now reveal opportunities you could not see when you were standing still. I remember when I finally committed to a daily hour of focused work on a personal project. The first weeks felt awkward. Some mornings I wondered if anything worthwhile was happening at all. Yet something subtle was shifting. As soon as I started moving, people and resources began to surface. A former colleague reached out with an unexpected offer of collaboration. A book recommendation landed exactly when I needed it. None of this was magic. It was the natural response of a world that rewards movement. Waiting keeps you invisible. Action makes you visible. Taking ownership of your future requires a steady refusal to surrender to fear. Fear will argue for delay. It will whisper that you need more preparation, more money, more clarity. But fear is a poor advisor. I learned to greet it, thank it for its concern, and move anyway. Each time you act in spite of fear, you diminish its power. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else matters more. Small, consistent steps build momentum faster than bursts of frantic effort. I once believed I needed a dramatic breakthrough to change my life. Instead, I found that steady, modest action was the true engine of transformation. I set a rule to spend at least 15 minutes every day advancing a long-term goal, writing a proposal, studying a new skill, reaching out to a potential partner. 15 minutes often stretched into an hour, but even on busy days, the minimum kept progress alive. Over months, those brief sessions added up to hundreds of hours of real creation. What once felt impossible became inevitable. Responsibility is the companion of action. To create your future, you must accept that your choices carry more weight than circumstances. This is liberating. It means you do not need permission from a boss, a parent, or the economy to begin. The power to start lives entirely with you. When I finally embraced this truth, I stopped blaming traffic, schedules, or the lack of perfect conditions. I began shaping the hours I had instead of complaining about the ones I didn't. Creation thrives on discipline. Plans are important, but rituals turn intention into reality. My morning routine became a quiet contract with my future. I rose at the same time, brewed coffee, and sat with a notebook before checking a single message. Some days I generated pages of ideas. Other days I simply clarified the next small action. The ritual itself was the victory. It reminded me daily that the future is built in the present, not in some distant someday. Relationships play a critical role in this process. Surround yourself with people who are also moving, creating, building. Their energy will challenge you to stay awake to possibility. I joined a small mastermind group where we met every week to share progress and setbacks. We celebrated tiny wins, held each other accountable, and offered perspective when doubt crept in. Those gatherings became a furnace of motivation. When one person faltered, the rest of us lifted them. Creation is personal, but rarely solitary. Action brings clarity, but it also brings setbacks. You will encounter obstacles, failed attempts, financial surprises, moments of discouragement. See these not as signals to retreat, but as teachers. Each obstacle carries information. When a product I launched fell flat, I resisted the urge to label it failure. Instead, I asked what it revealed about the audience and my approach. That lesson shaped the next project, which succeeded beyond expectation. Waiting would have taught me nothing. Only action could. Another key is learning to act with patience. Impatience is just another form of waiting. Waiting for instant proof that the effort is worth it. But creation grows like a tree. You plant the seed, water it, protect it, and trust the slow, hidden process. I often remind myself that today's actions are investments in a harvest I may not see for months or years. Patience is not passivity. It is faith in the quiet work of time. Environment supports this faith. I designed a space that invites creation, a desk free of clutter, a notebook always open, a corner where my mind knows it is time to build. Small signals like these lower the friction between intention and action. When tools are ready and distractions minimized, beginning becomes natural. You do not have to fight for every start. The space itself welcomes you. One of the greatest rewards of consistent action is the confidence it builds. Confidence is not bravado. It is the quiet knowledge that you can rely on yourself. Each day you keep your promise to take the next step, you strengthen that trust. Over time, you stop wondering whether you are capable. You know you are because you have proven it. That inner assurance is its own kind of freedom. Look back at the last few years of your life. How quickly they passed. The next 5 will move just as swiftly. The question is not whether time will pass, but what you will have to show for it. Imagine what you could create by adding a single purposeful hour to each day. In 1 year, that is more than 300 hours. Enough to write a book, launch a business, master a skill, transform your health. You do not need to overhaul your entire schedule. You need only to claim the minutes that are already within your grasp. I once met a woman who had always dreamed of painting, but kept postponing until retirement. One day, she decided to spend 20 minutes a night with a brush and canvas. 20 minutes led to longer sessions, and within a few years, she was exhibiting her work and selling pieces to collectors. She told me, "The only thing I regret is waiting so long to begin." Her story is not unusual. The distance between dreaming and doing is often just the first small action. So start now. Make the call. Open the notebook. Sketch the design. Take the walk. Record the idea. Do not wait for certainty. Do not wait for the schedule to clear or the fear to fade. Begin while the dream is still fragile, because action is the shield that protects it. Every step you take sends a message to yourself and to the world. I am the creator of my future. Years from now, when others ask how you built a life you love, you may smile and say, "I stopped waiting." They will see the results. Projects completed, skills mastered, relationships nurtured. And think you must have been lucky. But you will know that luck had little to do with it. The turning point was the quiet day you chose movement over delay, creation over hesitation. And that choice is available to you again today. Momentum is a quiet force, but once it starts, it can carry you farther than any single burst of motivation. The first steps toward creating your future might feel small, almost invisible, but every repeated action is like adding weight to a rolling wheel. Over time, that wheel moves with its own power. When you stop waiting and begin doing, you set momentum in motion. And momentum is one of the greatest allies you will ever know. I discovered this when I finally committed to building a business I had dreamed about for years. At first, every call, every email, every late Night planning session felt like pushing a heavy stone uphill. I doubted myself daily. Yet I kept showing up. Weeks later, without any obvious turning point, the stone began to move more easily. People started calling me instead of the other way around. Opportunities I hadn't foreseen appeared. What changed was not the world. It was the energy created by steady, repeated action. Momentum rewards those who begin and refuse to quit. Waiting, on the other hand, drains energy. Each day you postpone action, you reinforce hesitation. You teach your mind to delay, and delay becomes a habit. I have met many people who speak passionately about a book they plan to write or a project they intend to start someday. They talk about it for years, but because they never begin, the dream grows heavier and more distant. Hesitation feeds on itself. The only cure is to break the cycle with movement, no matter how small. Action also reshapes the way you see the world. When you are waiting, problems appear larger than they are. When you are moving, solutions begin to reveal themselves. I once worried for weeks about how to find funding for a project. The moment I began reaching out, sending emails, making calls, sharing my idea, the fear shrank. A friend introduced me to a potential investor I would never have met had I stayed in the planning stage. Action invites help, waiting hides you from it. Creating your future is not about reckless leaps. It is about steady ownership of each day. I learned to focus on what could be done now rather than what might be possible someday. A single paragraph written, a single client called, a single skill practiced. These small steps rarely feel dramatic, but each is a vote for the life you want. Over time, those votes accumulate into a clear direction. Your future is the sum of those daily ballots cast by action. Consistency is the secret partner of creation. Inspiration may start the fire, but consistency keeps it burning. I made a simple commitment to work on my goal for at least one focused hour each day, no matter how crowded the schedule. Some days that hour produced breakthroughs. Other days it was a quiet grind. But the real power was not in any single session. It was in the growing record of days when I kept the promise to myself. That record became a source of confidence and momentum far stronger than a fleeting mood. Fear will keep visiting, even after you begin. Sometimes it shows up as self-doubt, other times as distraction or the temptation to settle for less. I treat fear as background noise. It might hum, but it does not direct my steps. Courage is simply moving forward while fear tags along. Each time you do, fear's voice grows weaker and your resolve grows stronger. Environment plays an essential role. I designed my workspace to invite focus, a clean desk, a quiet corner, a notebook always open. Visual cues reduce resistance. If your guitar is visible, you're more likely to play it. If a journal sits by your bed, you're more likely to write. Surroundings that encourage action make the choice to begin almost automatic. You can't wait for willpower every day. You design for it. Another lesson I've learned is that progress is rarely a straight climb. You will meet obstacles, unexpected bills, critical voices, sudden setbacks. These are not signs to stop. They are part of the creative path. Early in my speaking career, I faced an event where only a handful of people showed up. I felt embarrassed, almost ready to quit. But I gave the best talk I could. One person in that tiny audience later invited me to a larger conference that changed everything. Had I let disappointment win, that door would never have opened. Patience is as vital as action. Many give up because they confuse slow results with no results. Creation often works underground for a while. Seeds germinate in the dark before breaking the surface. When you are consistent, trust that growth is happening even when you can't yet see it. I remind myself often that today's effort is tomorrow's harvest, and some harvests take seasons to mature. Relationships become crucial allies when you're creating instead of waiting. Surround yourself with people who value action and perseverance. Their example will keep you moving when your own motivation wavers. I meet regularly with a small circle of friends who are pursuing big goals. We share wins and struggles, and the accountability keeps us all on track. When you know others are showing up every day, you're less likely to sit still. Freedom is one of the quiet rewards of action. Each time you move forward, you reclaim power from circumstance. You no longer wait for luck, approval, or a perfect plan. You act, and in acting you shape your destiny. The sense of agency this brings is energizing. You begin to trust that even if you don't control everything, you control enough to keep building. Think about the next 5 years. They will pass whether you act or not. Picture yourself then. Will you be grateful for the steps you took today, or will you wish you had started sooner? Every single day is a fresh chance to begin, to build momentum, to cast another vote for the life you desire. 5 years of steady action can transform health, finances, skills, and relationships in ways that astonish everyone, including you. A friend once told me that she regretted spending her 30s waiting for a perfect window to start a family photography business. One day she finally booked a small shoot for a neighbor just to begin. That first step led to referrals, then to a studio of her own. When I asked what changed, she said, "I stopped waiting for courage and let action create it." Her story is a reminder that courage rarely comes before action. It grows because of it. So keep moving. Write the next sentence, send the next email, take the next class, show up for the next practice. Don't measure each day by how spectacular it feels. Measure it by whether you honored the decision to create. The satisfaction of consistent effort is deeper than the thrill of occasional excitement. And one day, almost without realizing it, you will find yourself living the future you once only imagined. Momentum loves motion. Begin today, continue tomorrow, and keep going the day after that. Stop waiting. Start creating. Your future is already unfolding with every deliberate step you take. The habit of waiting often begins with a quiet thought. I'll start when I feel ready. But readiness is a mirage. Feelings follow action, not the other way around. The longer you pause, the heavier the dream becomes, and the more distant the first step appears. Freedom is never found in delay. It arrives the moment you decide that today is the only day that matters and you act on that decision. I think of a man I met who spent years telling friends about the novel he planned to write. He collected research, outlined characters, and waited for a season of uninterrupted time. That season never came. One evening, he finally sat down and wrote a single page. The next night, he wrote another. 2 years later, the book was finished. He told me the hardest sentence was the first one. Everything else followed because he refused to wait any longer. Creation begins the instant you choose movement over hesitation. Action brings an unexpected gift, clarity about what truly matters. When you are still, dreams remain vague and impossible to measure. But when you start building, you quickly see which ideas have weight and which are passing fancies. I learned this while developing a community project I once thought would take 10 years. As soon as I began, I discovered simpler methods and better partners. The project that had lived in my head as a giant obstacle became, through steady effort, an achievable plan. Waiting would never have revealed that insight. Discipline sustains the work when excitement fades. Inspiration may start you running, but discipline keeps your feet moving when the path is steep and lonely. There were mornings when I wanted to sleep, evenings when I wanted to scroll, days when fear whispered that my efforts were too small to matter. But I kept my daily appointment with the dream. One focused hour, no matter what. Over time, that discipline turned into a rhythm that carried me forward even when my emotions wavered. Freedom is not the absence of responsibility. It is the reward of responsibility accepted day after day. Obstacles will arrive. You may face financial strain, skepticism from others, or internal doubts that flare at the worst times. But challenges are not proof that you should stop. They are proof that you are moving. Each problem you solve becomes a stone in the foundation of your future. I once launched a program that failed to attract enough participants. It stung. But in reviewing what went wrong, I discovered a better audience and a sharper message. That lesson became the blueprint for a second launch that succeeded beyond expectations. If I had waited for flawless conditions, those lessons and that success would never have existed. Patience is the twin of action. Creating your future is not about frantic haste. It is about persistent faithfulness. A farmer plants and waters long before harvest. Likewise, you build steadily and trust that results will ripen in their season. Patience does not mean standing still. It means continuing to move without demanding immediate proof. When you accept that growth often hides underground, You free yourself from the anxiety of instant results and find peace in the daily work. Environment helps protect that daily work. I have learned to shape my surroundings to support creation. A quiet desk, a ready notebook, a space free from clutter. These small decisions reduce friction and make starting almost automatic. When tools are at hand and distractions minimized, the next step feels natural. You don't have to wrestle with willpower. The environment invites you forward. Companionship matters just as much. Seek people who are also building, who value action over endless talk. Their momentum will feed yours. I meet regularly with a small group of friends who share their weekly progress. Their dedication keeps me honest and inspired. When my energy dips, their example lifts me. When their confidence wavers, my steady effort encourages them. Creation may be personal, but it thrives in community. With time, consistent action reshapes not only your circumstances, but also your sense of self. You begin to see yourself as a creator, someone who transforms intention into reality. That identity is a powerful form of freedom. You no longer wonder whether you are capable. You know it because you live it every day. And as that confidence grows, larger goals that once seemed impossible start to feel inevitable. Think ahead 5 years. That span will pass whether you act or not. Imagine looking back and seeing that you spent those years waiting for a perfect moment. That never came. Now imagine instead that you used them to build something step by step, a body of work, a thriving business, a life of richer relationships and steady health. The difference between those futures is not talent or luck. It is the decision to begin and the resolve to continue. One evening, a retired teacher told me she had finally written the poetry she'd been carrying in her heart for decades. I thought I was too late, she said. But the poems were waiting for me to start. Once I began, they flowed. Her joy was not just in the finished pages, but in the daily act of creation, the steady proof that it was never too late to live fully. So stop waiting. Decide today that the life you want is worth a single small action right now. Make the call, write the paragraph, plan the meeting, take the walk. Do it not because conditions are perfect, but because time is precious and your dream deserves motion. Keep showing up tomorrow and the next day. Let each step, however modest, declare that you are the author of your story. Years from now, when people ask how you built a life of purpose, you may smile and say, I started when I was ready enough to start, which meant I started before I felt ready. They will see the projects, the relationships, the skills, and they may call it luck or talent. But you will know the truth. You simply refuse to wait. The future is not something you find. It is something you create hour by hour, choice by choice. Begin today. Continue tomorrow. Keep moving until the life you once imagined stands solid beneath your feet. Stop waiting. Start creating. And watch as your future unfolds in ways more beautiful and expansive than you dared to plan.